lot of people, what separates most people from becoming entrepreneurs is they always live down to their limitations and not to their potential. Entrepreneurs are not born, they don't have some secret. Parents all over the world are unintentionally and unknowingly squashing the dreams of their kids. If that thing fails, I failed. So a lot of people just decide not to take a risk.
Welcome back to the Impact Nations podcast. My name is Tim. I am your host. And again, this week we're continuing with our season 8 as we're talking with fascinating people who've written great books that happen to have impacted me. And this week, actually, I'm really excited to welcome back my friend Eric Knopf. Eric is an entrepreneur. He's a gifted speaker and father of 2 kids who he tells stories about in this book here. He and his wife are raising a couple of entrepreneurs. So he wrote us a book called Raising Entrepreneurs. So welcome back to the show, Eric.
Great to be with you, Tim. Good to see you.
I really enjoyed this book, but I when I pick it up, I get shivers because I read the whole thing while sitting in an ice skating rink while my daughter was learning figure skating, and they keep that rink very cold, and we don't do cold in New Mexico, so I remember just holding the book and shivering and stuff, but I still liked it.
Good. I'm so glad.
I love this book. It's helping us understand as parents how to raise our kids to be adventurous, to take risks, to go and grab life by the horns, so to speak. And actually, you talked a little bit about that last time you were with us as we were talking about the will of God, how it's okay for us to actually not sit back and wait for the will of God to happen to us, so to speak, but instead to go and actually participate with the Lord in that which he's created us to do, which is to be creative beings and go make our mark on the world. So I really enjoyed this. It was really helpful for me as a parent. It's actually challenged me. It helped me make a few decisions even on how I'm raising my kids with my wife. So thank you for that. You are an entrepreneur. You founded a company called Web Connects, and I'd love to learn a little bit more about kind of its origin story in a few minutes, but maybe tell us a little bit about your start as an entrepreneur, because you actually tell us in the book, like, you got started real early and your parents championed that and raised you to be an entrepreneur, whether they knew it or not. What were some of your earliest entrepreneurial exploits?
Yeah, thank you, Tim. I think the big premise that people will find in the book is that entrepreneurs are not born. They don't have some secret spirit about them. They don't have something. I think entrepreneurs are made, and I think they are made by how they are raised. When I got inspired to write the book, it came after the revelation of looking at all of the childhood stories of people like Mark Cuban and Steve Jobs and Elon Musk, and, like, fill the name in. They probably had some childhood story where that was an experience made possible by their parents that changed the trajectory of their life, where they ultimately became entrepreneurs. And so my big thesis is that we as parents can foster an environment, we can give them experiences, we can change the trajectory of their lives to be entrepreneurial or to become entrepreneurs based on how we raise them. So for me, I'm that living example as well. I believe I was raised to be an entrepreneur, and the things that are just innate in me, they're not a genetic advantage. They're not anything besides the fact that I was raised in a certain way with certain ingredients that changed how I thought about life, changed how I thought about me, changed how I looked at risk. And they were all experiences fostered by my parents. Now, to give you some context, my parents are not entrepreneurs. And so what they would say is, they're kind of just as surprised as I am, is I believe what they did on accident, we can do on purpose. Yeah. So to give you some context, my father is a general family practitioner physician. And so my mom is a singer-songwriter and raised us in the home. And so she's a full-time mom as well. But my dad basically is a doctor, right? So a man who's distinguished in his career, has gone through the rigors of college, got into medical school, has letters after his name, right? And so here Eric is, I think I'm 4 or 5 years old. In my earliest recollection of what I wanted to do for a professional career is I wanted to be the man at a road construction site who's changing the sign from slow to stop. And here is a physician, right? And he had the entire right to squash my 5-year-old dream and to be like, no, that's not a real job. That's a minimum wage job. He could have talked to me about how it's unskilled, about how in this family, we're going to become educated. We're going to get a real job. We're going to be a professional. He could have done all those things. And he and my mom, what they did is they like, that's awesome. Let's get you a yellow construction vest. Let's get you the helmet and let's take you out and to learn more about these things. And so that was the first spark where really it comes down to my dreams weren't squashed.
Yeah.
Parents all over the world are unintentionally and unknowingly squashing the dreams of their kids because they are afraid of them, or they're trying to rationalize them, or they're trying to justify them, or they're trying to set them up for future success, and they can't handle the 5-year-old dream. And what they're doing is they're trying to be helpful and like, no, son, like, you should be something that's more serious or more, that makes more money, and parents mean well, but they are squashing the dreams of their kids.
Yeah.
And so for me, the very first ingredient that set my life on a trajectory of being an entrepreneur was not being afraid of my own personal ambitions, because my parents got behind them. The reason that parents don't need to be afraid of whatever ridiculous thing comes out of your 4-year-old's mouth is they're going to change it 100 more times.
Yeah.
You don't need to spend the oxygen to try to rationalize or do whatever. Like, my son for a lot of years wanted to be a robot inventor, and I don't need to be like, do you know how much math that requires? Like, I don't need to go discourage him. Like, I want to be for him, and he might change, actually, he has a number of times. He wants to be a professional dirt bike rider right now. And that's great. Let's go do that, But I went through all of those different changes. So I then wanted to become a fighter jet pilot, and I was really into Top Gun. My parents got me the jean jacket.
Yep.
I named my son Maverick, just so that listeners know how obsessed with Top Gun I was as a kid. My dad took me to air shows, got me involved in, interesting things about flight. Then I wanted to be a cartoonist. I got into drawing. Then so my mom got me a drafting table with like the big light and a big thing to perfect my drawing skills. They got me someone who would teach me how to illustrate. Then I wanted to be a fly fisherman, and so I got The River Runs Through It. I was highly influenced by movies as a kid. Really got into fly fishing and started tying flies. My dad got me the fly tying kit. And so at every different juncture that I went through my childhood, my parents got behind me and helped me express it and helped me to explore it. And then I realized, wow, like, drawing is really hard. I don't know if I want to draw comics all the time, and so my natural experiences shaped my ultimate move in direction. And so later when I became an entrepreneur, it really is the manifestation of just like chasing a new idea and pursuing it and making it a reality. And so I really believe my entrepreneurial drive, my spirit was actually just not being squashed, not being suppressed from an early age, and a number of other different things in the book. You can read all about them. But for me, I would trace back my entrepreneurial spark to be that 4 or 5-year-old boy who looked and said, one day I want to do that, and not having the voice of criticism come and crush me.
Yeah.
Because we will bring that all of ourselves later when it comes from a parent. I believe that parents play such a vital role in that, and parents can either fan the flame or they can squash it.
You spend some time talking about preparing our kids to experience failure, because failure is inevitable. As an entrepreneur, you are going to reach moments of failure. How do we teach our kids not to fear failure?
I think it comes to being parents that are willing to try a lot of different things. And we should not relegate our futures, both of our kids and our lives, to these like really rigid paths. We should be flexible, and we should be malleable in towards what that looks like. We want our kids to take risks and take chances. We want them to try things. And so this can be anything from even sports. We first tried soccer. And our kids were terrible at soccer, and so then we tried a different sport and then different sport. And, and so just finding like, all right, we're both missing in terms of an enjoyment and also proficiency gap. Like when you have both of those missing, we know we should change. And then we live in the mountains. And so we got the kids let's try skiing. Great. Why don't we try the race team? And so let's try that. So my daughter, she is really competitive. And so we would do these races and she would finish 75th out of 150. That's actually really good. And then the next year she finished 32nd out of 120. And it's like, that's great. 32nd, just like, it kind of misses the satisfaction of what she's chasing, And so we would, mix it up. And so then for my son Maverick, he's a little bit taller. He's like this, he's like 5 heads above every other child. So we got him into basketball, and lo and behold, he's really good at basketball just because he can, he's closer to the hoop, and was able to get it. And so he scored some hoops, like, yes. And so we would change different things to help our kids experience it, like that disappointment of like, I wanted to win and I didn't win. That's really healthy. It's really healthy for our kids to experience those kind of letdowns and that disappointment. But we shouldn't relegate our future to that. Like, okay, what can we change now? What do we want to try now? So then our daughter got into horseback riding. I grew up with horses. My wife's a horse vet. My in-laws have got horses. Horses were always going to be part of our future. But then we started to explore, hey, we want you to have a goal. We want there to be not just recreational riding, but we want there to be a challenge. So we got her into competing with horses and jumping with horses, which in my mind is so insanely dangerous and ridiculous that we would subject ourselves to such danger. And so she started to train for that. And she's been winning first place in her age group for these horse jumping competitions. And that satisfaction just flooded her, and feeling that, joy of like, I tried something new and it didn't work. Then I tried something else new and that didn't work. And I tried something new and then that worked. And that became her passion. And then that just invigorated her life. So we need to help our kids experience new things, have a goal, that have a challenge, that have a risk, that have the possibility of disappointment, a letdown. But then either we can push through, we can get better, we can train more, we can do whatever things to get better at that thing. But ultimately, we shouldn't relegate our kids to this perpetual disappointment against their own ambitions, against their own enjoyment. We should, as parents, help to try new things. And for me, that manifested in my professional pursuits, that same thing. Tried a bunch of different things, didn't like it, tried another thing, didn't like it. And being okay to change course should be permitted in every area of our life, but especially with our kids, and not to feel like, well, we've always done this, we always need to do it. Find something your kids are going to love and they're also going to be good at. It's going to be rewarding. But going through those setbacks and those failures are really important too.
Risk. You mentioned risk. When I think entrepreneurship, one of the first things that comes to mind is risk, because it is a very risky thing to step out and try your own thing and put yourself out there. You tell a story in your book about as a youngster, you mentioned a minute ago that you were really into drawing and stuff, and you'd drawn a picture and somebody asked you to turn it into a t-shirt. Hey, could you make us a t-shirt out of that, or t-shirts plural? And you just enthusiastically said absolutely, and then went away and I don't know how to do that, so now I'm gonna have to figure that out. Is that a common trait amongst entrepreneurs who just say yes to whatever opportunity comes their way and then they'll figure it out along the way?
I think if they are raised, if they're raised that way, yes. But I think a lot of people, what separates most people from becoming entrepreneurs is they always live down to their limitations and not to their potential. So we will only think as far to our current capabilities, our current knowledge, our current proficiencies. An entrepreneur really is about what could be and what if. And so it's every entrepreneurial pursuit always stretches you, always challenges you. It pushes you beyond what you are. No one, so like, oh, I'm an expert at this thing, and now, I don't need to learn anything. I don't need to risk anything. And so if we raise our kids in a way that says, hey, you don't know how to do that, well, let's go learn to do that. Let's go figure it out. Entrepreneurship is the pursuit of always figure things out. Yeah. So in that exact case, I made this drawing and I spent a ton of time on it. And so I brought it to this motocross shop owner, and he just was like blown away by it because it meant a lot to him. And so he's like, hey, can you turn it into a t-shirt? I was like, and it just like came out of me, I think by accident, like, well, of course, sure, no problem. So then I go to my parents and like, Mom, Dad, I told I could turn this into a t-shirt. And so we did a little research, like, okay, wow, we got to learn Photoshop. like I have to learn how to digitize that drawing. So they got me a scanner for Christmas or some, holidays, like I think just around the corner. And so I scanned the drawing. So great. It's on a computer now. Now I got to learn how to digitize it. And so I then spent all this time on that. And then I needed to learn about color separation. I called a t-shirt companies like, I need to figure out how to print this t-shirt. They gave me some tips. And so my parents enabled that exploration under their supervision and under their support, but then came back and said, okay, I'm ready to, how many t-shirts do you want to order? And he ordered like 800 t-shirts. And so it was just this wild journey, but I never would have done it if I just lived to my limitation, just said, no, I only know how to draw. I can't do anything else. We need to help our kids extend those boundaries. And us personally, we need to live beyond our current limitations and explore what we might be capable of to learn and to stretch in those ways.
Failure and risk, two things we're going to have to embrace if we're going to be entrepreneurs. But sometimes I think, perhaps more in the West, I don't know, but it's definitely a human tendency for us to begin to find our identity in what we do. And so whether that's as entrepreneurs or as employees, we find our identity in those successes, let's be honest, right? And so when those failures hit, it hits that much harder because we have really begun to say, I am what I accomplish, thus I am what I fail to accomplish. How do we mitigate that risk, and where should we find our identity rather than in what we do or what we accomplish?
Yeah, and this is the very first principle of my book in how we can help our kids is fostering a secure identity within them. Our natural trajectory of our life, unchecked, is that we'll put all the value within ourselves into what we do. Yeah. Even when we talk to the people, like, hey, good to meet you, Johnny. What do you do? And so our social norms elevate even our vocation into this kind of social currency and this order and this value that's there. So the natural push of culture and society says that what I do makes me valuable. And so for us, we need to step back, make our identity not about what we do, like who I am makes me valuable. And what I do is just what I do. Because what I do might fail. And that is the trapping of an entrepreneur. And a lot of people who want to become entrepreneurs is that entrepreneurship is really risky. You're going to have a lot of things that fail. You're going to have a lot of things that don't work out. Now, if your identity is wrapped up into you doing something, then it's so much more risky to start something, because if that thing fails, I fail. I've now wrapped my identity into this endeavor, and it's not whether that thing makes money or is successful or acquires a customer. If that thing fails, I failed. So a lot of people just decide not to take a risk. Yeah, it's too risky for them because they've internalized all of their identity and all of their worth into what they do. And so if we want to be healthy entrepreneurs, we want to be healthy parents that help our kids become entrepreneurs, we need to disassociate and to distinguish that who you are is not what you do, and what you do is not who you are. And when you find the value and the worth that's there, then we actually can venture and take more risks, because if it fails, all right, that's no problem. And that is what was really a gift to me, is I changed my mind so many different times, and a lot of things didn't work out. And it was like, all right, I'll just try something else. So my parents helped me develop a secure identity in who I was, and their pleasure with me was never contingent upon the success of any given thing. And so that allowed me to then have an ambition and have a risk tolerance that says, I'm going to try this. And if it doesn't work out, if it fails, that's okay. I'll just try something else. I'll keep on going. It never internalized. It never became this nuclear thing for me. When I was pursuing my wife in college, she's going on to become a veterinarian, again, a real job. And then I'm this high risk wannabe entrepreneur. And I came to her as if I had some epiphany from on high, because there's a discussion like, can I provide for us if we get married? She's going to go full time into grad school, and it's going to be all upon me. And our entire future is on to Eric's got a bunch of ideas, right?
Yeah.
And so to try to mitigate her fears, I was like, I figured it out. 9 out of 10 businesses fail. So all I need to do is just start 10. And one of those mathematically should be the one that works,
That's
and I
math.
just like very matter of fact just try to like ease her concerns on it. And the funny thing is like the math has almost worked out exactly that way. I've had a handful of failures, I've had a few base hits, and one really home run, which is WebConnects. But it's funny how even as I approached our future and how do we raise a family together and how do we look at this, like I just had this, I'm going to have some things that don't work. And in fact, my promise to her, and I would recommend this to a lot of entrepreneurs that are younger, is to set a time limit on the risk.
Hmm.
Like I can't maybe promise 24 months, 5 years, whatever, like we don't know how long these things take. It takes a long time. And so what I told her when I got married is like, I need all of my 20s to risk it all and to even lose it all. But when I turn 30, if I don't have one of these endeavors, one of these ideas really going, I will go get a job. And so from a marriage and relationship standpoint, I was able to put a limit upon how far this life will go with all this risk and uncertainty. And I think that's healthy for some people. And before we have kids, I'm going to risk it all before we have kids. I don't want to, be in jeopardy of putting my kids on the street. Like she and I can eat top ramen, that's fine. But the risk tolerances change once you have kids. And so I worked with her on that. But it's funny how that inherent risk was built into my identity. I don't fear failure because it's not going to change who I am and who I am with God as well.
Well, hey, everybody. I am joined today in the studio with, well, I call him Dad. You can call him Steve. And my dear friend, Craig, who is coming in from down under. Looking good, Craig, coming to us via Zoom. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, it's amazing what filters can do on a Zoom. Hey, looking great.
Indeed. I have got these guys here because I wanted to chat with you a little bit about your recent trip to Malawi. We're going to be going to Malawi together as a team for the Journey of Compassion next year, and I thought it'd be great just for you guys to give a little bit of an idea of what people can expect when they're there. So I think maybe I'm going to ask an unfair question, but we'll just start with your number one takeaway from your visit to Malawi, the one thing that's really resonated with you since that time that you were there, that really stuck with you. So, Dad, I'll start with you, and then we'll be able to expand on this. But maybe just real quick, what was like the number one thing?
Okay.
At
one point, we headed off in a vehicle to where really the epicenter of all the damage from the Cyclone Freddie, and seeing the resilience, seeing incredible, what looks to me like permanent damage, and seeing how the little bit of help they got, how they have just used that to the maximum.
Yeah.
To help others.
Yeah, and just to remind our listeners, we were there right after that cyclone in March with 200 water filters and a whole lot of meals, and then from there things have developed since then. But that's the relief you're talking about. Craig, how about you? What was one of your biggest takeaways from your time there?
Yeah, Tim, the take home was, well, essentially a bit more awareness. What I didn't understand was that Cyclone Freddie was the longest recorded cyclone in history. It circulated through Mozambique and Malawi and Madagascar for 33 days, and they hadn't recorded one so long in history. And that's quite a sobering thought. I, as usual, was stunned, and I shouldn't be, but by the extraordinary nature of our partners, on the ground. So Pastor Mark and Richard, who team up like the dynamic duo to get the work done to bring aid and to bring the gospel into communities, it was just exceptional to see that. Like Papa Steve, the devastation that we saw was sobering, and the responsiveness to that need by the church, by Impact Nations, that really stuck out. One day we were in a car for hours, literally stopping every, 15 or 20 minutes. And we'd stop and we'd find a water filter, and a village gathered round the water filter, and people drinking fresh drinking water because Impact Nations was there, and they all had the same story. Impact Nations was the organization that was there when they needed it most. And I won't mention other aid agencies, but they did, and they specified the delayed nature, if any, kind of help that happened through other agencies. but consistently right through the trip. And I mean, we drove for a whole day and stopped village after village after village. They all had the same story. It was like Impact Nations was here first. Impact Nations helped us. Impact Nations got food to us, got water to us. That was probably the most startling thing for me in the trip was our responsiveness in comparison to, you know, all the other aid agencies that were ultimately either bringing help or not.
We're recording right now just a short commercial for our podcast this week, but in a few minutes, we're going to talk a lot more about the ongoing work in Malawi. But I want to just talk real quick about what you guys have just mentioned, which is relief. Impact Nations, a big part of what we do is we try to be there as soon as we can after a disaster, as you've said, Craig, to meet the immediate, most practical needs, which are usually food, sometimes shelter, and definitely clean water after a natural disaster. And so one of the quotes we had last March was like, "You stopped cholera in its tracks." If people want to get involved in that, if you want to support the work that we're doing, a great way to do that is through the Impact Nations catalog, the gift catalog. You can buy a water filter for a family. You can purchase a few meals for a family. And we use those funds in times of emergency to be able to get there very quickly to provide that. So just impactnations.com/catalog to learn more about that. But another big part of what we do is Journeys of Compassion. And I hinted at that earlier, but we're going to be there in April. We're on the ground for 12 days with the team. Dad, what do you think people can look forward to in terms of a journey of compassion? This is our first ever journey of compassion to Malawi. What are you most excited about for that trip?
Yes, I'm very excited, and that's not hyperbole. I really, really am. We're going to be able to, besides sharing the gospel, where we met so many people, there's churches being planted just like crazy in response to all that's going on. So we're just going to be sharing the gospel, praying for the sick, but specifically seeing a skills school that is starting up, specifically seeing anti-trafficking teams, and we'll talk more about that later. And specifically getting engaged in a lot of water filters because the need is huge. So I think that's going to be very, very powerful, besides the ministry side that really goes with all of our journeys.
Yeah. Craig, you're actually going to be on that trip. You're going to be on that team in Malawi. I'm sure you're excited to get back there. What are you most looking forward to about that trip?
That's a really unfair question, but I'm deeply excited about getting back there. I mean, I mentioned a moment ago our partners, Pastor Mark and Richard. Those guys are great guys, great kingdom big hitters. They are very much in the representative of the partners that we have in Impact Nations all around the world. I'm looking forward to giving those guys a hug and to partner with them as well. Pastor Mark, when Papa Steve and I were together over there, he thought it was a good idea to gather his pastors together for a couple of days just to, you know, to sow into them. And like in the blink of an eye, there's 110 pastors crammed into a hall, and we had the privilege of ministering with them, some of whom had ridden a couple of days on a push bike from Mozambique to get to that. You know, these guys have far-reaching, you know, influence. And when you hear some of the things that Richard, who oversees a lot of their development work, some of the, you know, the rooms that guy has been in and influenced, and now is bringing that kind of influence practically with Impact Nations on the ground. You know, so we saw the Thrive Gardens that had been, you know, demolished during a cyclone, and then we'd seen them, you know, reconfigured and built. And Papa Steve and I stood in a field with there must have been 30 of the local villagers there, all, you know, pouring out their you know, their sweat into the garden to build something as a resource for that community. I mean, we had the opportunity to share the gospel with each of those and to pray with them. Every single person responded. And I think if I'm excited about something, it's this wonderful privilege that Impact Nations affords people in the JOC, the Journey of Compassion, to be able to do the stuff, to take our team members and say, here's a group of people. I mean, we walked into a snooker hall when we were in the village there, one village, and it was like, right, here's a group of people. Let's share the gospel. Let's help them to understand Jesus and invite a response to Jesus, and to see the responsiveness in people in that nation. That's what I'm super excited about. I'm super excited about taking people to be able to do the stuff, to preach the gospel, to heal the sick. And gee, we saw a whole bunch of people healed as well. And so, that floats my boat, and I can't wait to get over there again for that.
That's fantastic. All right, we're going to continue this conversation. So if you're seeing this during the podcast, I would encourage you to tune back in. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube, because that's where this material is. So subscribe there so you can see that. We're going to post this in a couple of days, a full conversation with these guys, get a few more stories for what happened while they were there and what they saw and what they're looking forward to in 2024 for this ministry as well. So for now, we're going to get back to the Impact Nations podcast. By the way, if you want to register for that journey, just head to impactnations.com/Malawi. You can learn all about it. Contact Bill if you want more information. All the links are right there. impactnations.com/Malawi. We'll see you there. In a minute, I want to ask you more about your company as well, and kind of maybe give us the origin story of what you do now. But I want to revisit one thing, just as parents. I'm concerned about cost. You said, yeah, just celebrate and chase after whatever your kid's chasing after. They'll change their mind later and things like that. Doesn't that just get really expensive if they just, want to keep on taking up different hobbies and pursue different dreams?
It can be, but so far I will do these dad days, or some people call them yes days, but I will go to my kids like, if you can do anything, what is it? What? Like, think of anything. And usually their wildest dreams are like, go to a nearby water park, get ice cream, eat pizza in bed, and stay up too late. And so to say yes to our kids' dreams, oftentimes is not as expensive as we think. But it depends on the age. Certainly if your child's dream is like, I want to become a pilot, well, you don't need to enroll them into a $10,000 flight school. Like, that doesn't need to be the bar right now. There's a lot of other little hurdles and bars that you can do. My daughter was interested in horses, right? There's another expensive activity. I mean, horses are money incinerators. Like, no one should ever, own a horse and expect to be financially well. Like, they just consume money. But there's a number of ways to do that. We had people and friends who had horses. You can take horse lessons. Then you can lease a horse. And so there's a gradation of the expense that goes, and there's a lot of areas to test of how far are we going to go before we go all in. Even with skiing is really expensive too. And we would get used gear. And so, there is levels of investment that are there, but following the kids' appetite, and also what's appropriate now to test it, and what is the right level here. And so it can, based on maybe the circumstance, but when we're talking about our kids' futures and dreams, I think to say yes and then find out what is a version now and what's a version later, because there is certainly a scale that can go. But I am definitely pro yes for exploring things with kids and to see how it works, and then investigate the additional layers of investment after that.
Your company, tell us about how you got started. Did you stumble into this thing, or did you set out to start a company and it turned out exactly as planned?
It's funny. It actually traces all the way back to the drawing board and the illustration that I gave to the motocross owner who asked me to put it on a t-shirt. So after I came back with a t-shirt, he's like, wow, this is great. Can you put it on a business card? And I was like, yes. I have no idea, like, how big is a business card? How does that work? And I go home and, I've now got some experience with Photoshop, and how do I get their logo? I got to digitize their logo. And then I put it on business cards, and I went to Kinko's and I had them print all these business cards. I went like the paper shredder, and, I brought him back some business cards, and he's like, great. Can you make this into a catalog? And I'm like, yes, of course. And so, I got a digital camera, and took pictures of products. And so I took pictures of his products and I organized them in Photoshop and did that, and came back. And then he's like, great, can you take the catalog and make it a web page? And that was the really first big challenge. Like, now it's like, how do I get on Photoshop and change the medium? Everything was like printed. And at that point I got uncomfortable with it. And so started exploring the web. And so found a friend who at that time learned Front Page, which is like this really basic web editor. And, you could take an image and drop it. It's kind of like Microsoft Word, but for web pages. And so he taught me how to get something on the web, and had basically kind of like a helper, of like, here's how this works. We now have this thing called YouTube, which will teach you anything in the world you
YouTube
want to
University,
know.
baby.
Totally. So back then didn't have YouTube to do that. So I had, real people to help me these things. And so that was the journey. And so then I created my first website. And then another person asked, "Hey, can you do a website for me?" Sure. Like I figured out. And so now I've got like more of these tools in kind of my toolbox. And so I was doing that through college and putting myself through college, paying for surfboards and dirt bike parts, and ultimately paying to buy a ring, which I proposed to my wife. And so when I left college, I was doing websites for different people. And so I had this revelation of like, wow, I have gone through idea all the way to websites. I should create a company that takes ideas from start to finish, all the way from ideation to publish website, catalogs, business cards, and things like that. And I called it Vision Launchers. We will launch your vision. And so it was this agency where you would come in with your idea. Great. And over the next several weeks, I'm going to work and I'm going to produce a whole identity branding website package for you, and you'll be off and running. And I did about 200 of those. And it was incredible. And at every different layer, I was being challenged with, hey, can you do this? Can you do that? Can you do this? And so I was finding myself doing some software within the website development side. And I had a couple outsourced people in Canada, and I'd say, hey, the client wants this, can you build this? And so I started to learn how software on the web works. And that time, your businesses actually could be on the web. Then in 2008, when the whole market and economy crashed, and I had a whole bunch of home builders as customers at that time, I found myself out of work. I had no new projects coming in. And so I had a couple employees at that time. And so I went to a nonprofit client in my former church and was like, I've got some time. I've got a couple software developers. I have a couple employees. Can we build anything for you as we navigate and wait for this kind of economy to rebound? And they both said, recurring donations, online donations is something we want to do. We want to do it better, but it's complicated, it's expensive. And I looked at the market, what options are there for if you're a church or nonprofit to raise money? And they were expensive. They required you to know all this technical knowledge. It didn't even look like your organization, looked like, somebody else's website. And so like, wow, why don't we create something that is simple, that's brandable, that's you? And then instead of having the customer take care of all the technical hassle, why don't we just take care of it? And then we looked at the donation experience as well. And all the providers out there required your donors to create passwords in order to donate. And so it was just this very like simple, like on the, just like this simple revelation of like, wow, if someone's about to give you money, why do you want them to go create a password and go to their inbox and password strength? Oh, you need 19 characters and a hieroglyphic, like all this to get your money. Like, no, like let's make it password free. So we created this password free, hosted, non-tech required donation widget that just simply charges a credit card and can do it on a recurrent interval. There was no way to stop the donation once it came in. It was like going to run forever, but that's okay because we would figure that out later.
Yeah.
And so that is how it started. And in the throes of the recession, building that tool. And then I have a friend and mentor, and he was coming out of a lot of event background experience. And so he looked at the donation tool and he's like, hey, can you make this, work with events? And the way you donate and the way that you register for event are really not that different. And so we changed it and adapted it, and we called it Web Connects because it just was a domain name that I owned, at the time. It's like, oh, this is good enough for now. And so event registration, event ticketing, and donations. And we started that in 2008. We iterated on it over the next several years, found our different categories and niches. And now every year, over $1 billion flows through our software on behalf of our customers. We get to power some of the biggest events in the world, work with the biggest brands in the world. It's incredible. Out by you, I think we do the Balloon Fiesta, the Albuquerque Balloon Hot Air Balloon Festival. So 1 million tickets. It's crazy. It is massive. And so we get to work with huge organizations like that. And it's so fun. And we are just this kind of stealthy company. We've got about 80 employees, and it's so fun. So all of my current endeavors really can trace back down to my dad and my mom getting me a drafting table, championing that dream, exploring something as a gift, having this invitation to extend it, them helping me extend my capabilities to meet the next opportunity, and just been doing that for 20 years now.
I actually don't remember if I learned this from talking to you just in conversation earlier this year, or if it was from reading your book, truth be told. But I know you've got an extraordinary team. Like the culture of your company is amazing. The way you guys treat your employees and things like that it's quite extraordinary. I wondered, just in our final few minutes here, could you tell us how, as a leader of many, and you started out as a lone guy trying to figure out how to work Photoshop and a scanner, and now
Right.
you lead 80 employees and really by extension their families in a sense. How do you lead your organization? And specifically, I'd love to know, how does your faith, how does God walk with you through the leadership of a company like that?
Yeah, I think when I trace back how we got our company culture, which we, for a given job opening, we'll get 50, 60 applicants, for an entry-level job. We've got a 90% employee retention rate. A lot of people have been with us for over 10 years. We're growing a lot now, but we've got a lot of people been in this for a long time. We keep people, we're able to attract really amazing people because these tiny companies like Apple, Facebook, and Google, they are paying ridiculous amounts for the world's greatest talent.
Yeah.
And yet we're able to build a world-class tech company with great talent, and we're attracting them as well, but we do it with a different way. But I'd say from a faith perspective is that we believe that the corporate vehicle is one of the best ways to bless people, to cause for human flourishing. And there's nonprofits that serve people and things like that, and that's great. And we can serve humanity through these, purpose-driven nonprofit organizations, which is great. But your business has the potential and the capacity to help flourish your team, their families, and their cities. And when I do like a 2-3 month, 4-month check-in with new hires, I'm like, hey, how's it going? Do you like it here? Do you like the catered lunches? Do you like the company trips? Do you like the ping pong tables, things? And like, all that stuff's great. But they're like, I'm sleeping better. I've lost 10 pounds. My marriage is in the best place ever. I'm more connected with my kids. My stress is down. My resting heart rate is down because we have viewed that our people is actually our greatest secret weapon in the marketplace. That we want to invest into our people, help their individual lives get better. And if their individual lives get better, what they will produce for the company will not only be extraordinarily better, but we'll be able to do it with fewer people. And we refer to our team as 10Xers. We're 80 people, but we probably punch at the level of maybe a 700 person company by our impact. And so we're able to do it because we have people who love what they do. They feel like we are blessing them, that we're investing into them, we're generous, and they're rewarding us back with their heart and their effort, and the result is incredible. We're able to make this world-class technology platform that is doing incredible things, but we have such a great time. I'm just on this experiment of like, how far can we go with a generous company? And we will do these company trips, which started as like, hey, let's just go out to a park and like, let's take our staff and like, oh, let's do like a dinner one night and bring all of our spouses. That'd be kind of cool. Then in 2016, it turned into, let's take a company trip out of country. Cool. A lot of companies would reserve that from like maybe their top salespeople. We're like, no, we want to take every staff member. That's unusual. Then we're like, we want to take everybody's spouses. That's also unusual. They're like, and we want them to bring their kids. Let's have it be the entire family. Now we're on unheard of territory. And they're like, let's go for a month. Let's see what happens. So we did 3 years with a month out of country. These poor souls, that's a long time. Like the plane's going this date, the plane's going back this date. You're either there or you're not. And so we, for first experienced it that way, and seeing how people's lives came alive when we invest in their families, we invest in their personal lives, we love on their kids. It is just so fun. And we've been doing this company trip ever since. We no longer can do it for a month, and we can't, we haven't gone to Costa Rica, but we've done Belize, we've done the Dominican Republic. This past year we did Cancun, Mexico, and the roster was like 225 people, and it was just a blast to take 200 plus people out of country. A lot of people, this is their first time ever out of country. Some people first time on an airplane, but the countless number of people who've never had a passport, things like that. It is so fun to invest in people's personal lives where you're giving them lifetime experiences and blessing them and their family, what happens in them and through them. It is so fun. And so I am 100% of a belief of mine that the kingdom is available at any company and any corporation by investing in that culture and in the people. And when you show up for them and you love them, you advance their lives, the kingdom of God is there. It really shows up, and it translates for us into being incredibly competitive in our markets and really creating a great result. So I love talking about company culture. It is the best thing I can talk about, and it's so much fun. And I just feel like I'm on this wild experiment. I'm just having the time of my life.
That's extraordinary. What's next for you, Eric? You've built up this big company. Are you starting more companies? You're always trying something new. What are you working on right now?
Oh man, I've got 100 ideas that are on like my 1-day list. Right now, I am just having such a blast with Web Connects. I don't want to mess that up. We're growing so much, and so for me, what's great in my role is I'm inventing all the new features we do. So even though I've been at this for 15 years, every week is almost like a new startup. Like, hey, let's invent this new text messaging tool. Let's do this and that. And so I get to flex all of my entrepreneurial muscles pretty much every day in my role, which is so fun. What a dream job to be able to, come together with my team every week and we get to invent the features. So I'm having so much fun with that. I also still love to preach and teach. I love teaching the Bible and teaching the things of God. And so doing that, but one day at a time, and just trying to live life to the fullest and not mess it up. And so far I've been successful with that.
Amen. That's awesome. Eric, if people want to get more of your stuff or learn more from you, where's the best place to find you?
Yeah, probably the best place is my Instagram, which is my full name. And I share adventures on there about my family, about work. You'll see some stupid things I'll do to mildly threaten my life for fun. And so that's always a good time. But I post a lot of adventures with my kids there, which is really a good time. I have a personal website, just my name, ericknopf.com. And on there, I have a few links to some resources and things. I've got some podcasts that I've been speaking on, preaching on for a number of years. So I'm out there. So I've got a difficult last name for those out there. It's Knopf. And yes, 40% of that is silent. But yes, that's where I'm at. People can find me, message me, and I'd be happy to connect with anybody out there.
Awesome. Well, folks, this book we're talking about today is Raising Entrepreneurs. It's 9 practical principles for raising your kids to become entrepreneurs. It's a great read, really helpful for parents. I actually found it really helpful as the leader of an organization that's raising up entrepreneurs all around the world too. So these are some principles we're already talking about with some of our team leaders around the world. So I would encourage you to go find that. Thank you so much for joining us today, Eric. I really appreciate it. It's always great to be with you. And thank you to all of our viewers and listeners. Do be sure to check us out every single week. The Impact Nations podcast is on YouTube every Thursday at 6 p.m. And, of course, available afterwards. Be sure to subscribe, hit the bell so you get those notifications. And we've got lots of great stories from around the world of entrepreneurs who are indeed discovering they were made for this stuff. And if you aren't into looking at my face, then you can listen on any audio podcasts app of your choice. Just look up Impact Nations podcast, and we will be delivered to your device every single week. Eric, thank you so much for being with us this week.
Wonderful to be with you. Thank you. What an honor.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you again next week. God bless.